Betrayal trauma or trauma, etc., wreaks havoc in every area of our lives. Oftentimes, we literally think or feel as if we're going crazy. And of course, if we're with somebody who likes to gaslight us, they will let us know that we're going crazy. I wanted to cover a few symptoms and effects in just four areas. There's many areas, many areas, because like I said, betrayal wreaks havoc in every possible facet of your existence. But just for this class, just four areas um, that I wanted to ensure that you knew you are not, in fact, crazy. This is not in any way an extensive or all inclusive list, but again, some of the effects that we feel after we discover betrayal or feel traumatized. Some of the physical symptoms, and these are the initial symptoms. Not speaking on the mind, because your mind is completely hijacked and completely um, in a state of chaos. But physical symptoms, you might experience panic attacks. For some people that don't know what a panic attack is, it's basically a point where you find yourself not being able to catch your breath, take breaths, breathe, your heartbeat increases. It brings your body in a state of panic. This is one of the ways your body goes into fight or flight mode. But panic attacks, and I've talked to people who wake up in the middle of the night having panic attacks. That's common, especially in the first part of discovery. Some people feel isolated from their support network, especially because, even if you're on the receiving end of betrayal, there is still shame, there's still guilt, there's still embarrassment. So a lot of times you kind of pull away from even the people closest to you, because whether you reconcile or go your separate ways, this is a very private matter. I was just talking to somebody the other day. I was actually on a podcast, and I said, one of the things between trauma and betrayal trauma is that if you have trauma in life, let's just say a parent dies, or somebody in your family dies, that's traumatic. But the world understands that. The world sympathizes with that. The world gives you compassion. Your job gives you 3 to 5 days off for bereavement. Man, you're suffering from a betrayal. You're dealing with tremendous, intense, profound pain, sometimes even more difficult and complex than losing somebody, but yet the world around you isn't there to give you 3 days of trauma time off. Loss of appetite or overeating. A lot of times people will just stay in the fetal position in bed for days on end with no appetite. You don't want to exist. So you don't want to eat, you have no appetite. Or the opposite happens. You are stress eating to the point where you find yourself constantly in the refrigerator or your pantry. Using substances or risky behaviors to cope. A lot of people, especially with say infidelity, they'll have retaliation behavior. And then it's it all goes out, all out, oh, you did this to me. Well, I'm going to do this now to you. And I'm going to do it with multiple people and no protection and this and this. It's like, I'm going to get even with you and hurt you. Or people will drink or start doing drugs or, things like that. I'm not saying any of this to excuse any of this away or rationalize or justify, but just to let you know these are common feelings that you have. So if you're feeling these, obviously do your best not to act on them. But if you're feeling them, you're not going crazy. Insomnia or too much sleep. Some people just can sleep days on end. You have no energy. You have no zest for life. You have no energy. You're not happy. You don't want to get out of bed. Or the opposite happens. You can't fall asleep at all. And you're tossing and turning and you're sweating and you're overthinking and so forth. Body aches and pains, stomach distress with indigestion, or that whole digestion system, your stomach is off. Increased heart rate, like I said before. These are just some of the physical manifestations of trauma on your body after betrayal. Like I said, just some. Now, some of the emotional characteristics and traits that you're going to go through could be anger. And when I say anger, I mean profound rage. I mean, After discovering betrayal, this is where people burn houses down and smash cars and physically aggress towards people. This is profound rage and anger. Um, so if you're feeling any of these at all, please watch yourself with acting on any of them, but just know you're common, you're normal for thinking of them or feeling them. Guilt, like I said, whether it's guilt or shame or embarrassment, even if you're on the receiving end of this, experiencing stressing nightmares. I can't even explain to you how many times people will wake up in the middle of the night, countless times, with a trigger, with them thinking about their partner, what they were doing. I mean, your mind is completely hijacked 100% during all this. Feeling emotionally numb, one of the sad things, frustrating things about betrayal trauma is, especially if you don't tell people out of guilt or shame or embarrassment, or let's just say you are working on reconciliation. And what happens is people around you don't know what you're going through. And so they'll come and confide in you or tell you things that are going on in their life. And you're sitting there thinking, I could give a care less. Seriously, that's your issue? Please. So you're emotionally numb to what other people are saying at times. Um, Hyper vigilant towards your partner. I mean, they could go in the bathroom with their phone and you are convinced they're texting their sexual tryst or their affair partner or whatever. Every time they pull out of the driveway, you're thinking they're picking up somebody at the bottom of the street, to have an illustrious affair with. So hyper vigilance towards your partner. I mean, you are at times could be checking their social media, checking their phone, checking their email, looking at their face, smelling their breath. I mean, and these aren't things that are uncommon. You're not crazy. I'm going to keep repeating that. You're not crazy. Depression. I mean, really, that you're just in a lull. Emotionally, you're just in a lull. Like you have no zest for life. Anxiety, you're anxious about everything. When you're betrayed, you trust nothing and no one. We pick our partners. We pick our partners with the understanding they're not going to hurt us. So when they do, you're not only confused at why they hurt you, you're also internally questioning, was I off in my choosing with this person? So anxiety is very common. Diminished self-esteem and self-worth. I mean, Lord have mercy. This is the time you are reflecting on all of your negative attributes. Was my butt too big? Is that why they weren't attracted to me? Was I not emotionally invested in them? Did I not compliment them enough? I mean, this is the time you are criticizing yourself continuously, and questioning, why wasn't I good enough? And your self-worth is absolutely affected. Emotional outbursts. I mean, these could be anywhere at any time for any reason. I mean, you could be sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner and look at the cranberry sauce, and next thing you know, you want to tip the table over because you're furious at a trigger. So these can come out of anywhere for no reason at all. You're not crazy. Intrusive thoughts about the betrayal. I told you before, you're going to wake up from nightmares, or maybe you have woken up from nightmares. And if you haven't, count your blessings, and hopefully you never do. But intrusive thoughts all the time, all the time. I mean, you could be cooking, you could be cleaning, you could be doing the dishes, you could be having sex, you could be praying, you could be trying to sleep. And sometimes these scenarios of what your significant other did or the person that betrayed you is just going to go on and on and on and on and play in your mind. All right. Another area where people have a hard time is in the area of sex. So some of the sexual symptoms, and this is a lot for people that are either reconciling with their partner, or if they move on too quickly to another sexual partner, or just things that we're dealing with internally ourselves. You may have a decreased libido or an aversion to sexual activity. Sometimes when people find out that their spouses were unfaithful, and I know there's other types of betrayal trauma and other types of trauma, but specifically for this one, when people find out their significant other has been unfaithful, their sex drive plummets. Like they have zero interest in sex. Now, the opposite happens also, and this is with people maybe who struggle with addiction. This is people that have been betrayed and also have an addiction history. The opposite might happen. They might be like, oh, carte blanche. I'm out there now, gonna live it up and sow my wild oats. You're not crazy. Whatever flip of the coin you're on, whatever side of the coin you're on, you're not crazy. Um, Fear of sex with who betrayed you. Anything from fear of sex to um, uh, whether it's STIs, STDs. While I'm with my partner, are they going to be thinking of the other person? I mean, anything at all to deal with fear around sex, you're not crazy. Flashbacks of the intrusive thoughts during sex. This is a big one. It's like, you want to feel special. You want to feel that gift of sex was your treasure, not to be given to someone else. That intimacy around sex, whether intimacy is before, during, and after, that was only supposed to be your gift. And so these are all the questions that we have while we're being sexual with our significant other is, are they present? Is it me? And not to digress, and I know I can, and this is why I should be looking at my notes, but I'm not. But I will say, this is why so many times after a betrayal, people become very needy. Your sex life changes. Sometimes people say, I don't want to have sex in the dark anymore. Or sometimes people say, now I only want to have sex in the dark because of body shame, whatever. Or some people will say, I need you to say my name when we're having sex. So I know that your mind is on me. Whatever the scenario is, you're not crazy. Feeling sexually undesirable to your spouse. I mean, I just covered that. Experiencing an inability to orgasm during sex with your partner. Now, listen, I am not going to go into this big, long side trailing of information, but our biggest sex organ, for any men watching this, I hate to burst your bubble, but it's not between your legs. It's between your ears. Our biggest sex organ is our brain. So if our brain is hijacked, it's very difficult to orgasm. And especially this is for women too. So this is why that whole emotional safety, emotional investment, that whole scenario around sex often changes until the dust settles. Now, you might have a new sexual program moving forward with if you're going to reconcile, or it could go back to the old way, but you first have to invest that emotional safety first to get things back on track. Sex is going to feel unsafe eventually. I mean, you're going to have triggers and thoughts and anger and you name it. There might also be some pain or discomfort during sex. I mean, a lot of times when you've been betrayed, your body closes up. And not to get too graphic, but a lot of our areas of our body where there's penetration or performing, that seems to tighten up and especially during the act, because when somebody that you love and trusted and they were your hero and your moral compass and the one that was your rock of Gibraltar is coming towards you in a sexual fashion, in a lot of ways it's almost like our abuser is coming towards us. And what's going to happen to your body if you feel like somebody's coming to you to sexually violate you? You're going to clamp up and close up. So for a while, penetration might even hurt, or and certainly physically, and of course mentally and emotionally, and all this other stuff. So if you're experiencing any of this, you're not crazy. Spiritual symptoms. After you discover your spouse has been unfaithful, you might have a complete loss of your spiritual beliefs. God, I prayed for my spouse. You gave me signs this was the right person. And now this happened. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. If you've experienced this, you're not crazy. Certainly anger towards your higher power. But every time they left for work, I prayed and said, could you protect them? I prayed and said, can you protect our marriage? I prayed and said, infidelity, I don't protect them from infidelity. Or I meditated, or whatever your spiritual belief is, or I prayed on my rosary beads, or whatever the case is. Now you're angry with some creator. You're not crazy. If you experience this, you're not crazy. Sometimes you feel punished, well, I did A, B, and C, so this is God's way of punishing me, or this is my creator's way of letting me know or knocking me down a few pegs or whatever. A, that's a lie. That's not how things work from a spiritual perspective in any way, shape, or form. And C, if you're feeling any of this, you're not crazy. A lot of times people say, well, you know what, I know that my spouse made the decision, so it's not God's responsibility, but I still feel like God is not protecting me moving forward. um, I don't want to get all spiritual, but God gives us freedom of choice, and the reason we have freedom of choice is because if we didn't have freedom of choice, then he couldn't give us his greatest gift, which is the choice to love. So he can't take away our choice. So your spouse's choice to step outside the relationship and break trust had nothing to do with God. That was their own choice. But I understand people have anger with God or their creator after this. Again, you're not crazy. And you, and well, I'm not going to digress. I'm going to go back. Um, just overall feeling of confused where you sit spiritually, religiously. Sometimes people change directions during this times with their spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs. Um, it's also the case where people get deeper into their spirituality, deeper into religious studies, deeper into a closer relationship with their God, their creator, because they're like, you know what? I've been lacking in this area, and I think I allowed an opening in my marriage. I need to now get a little closer and bring God to the center of my marriage, my relationship, my this, my that. Again, this is for those that are spiritual. Um, so those were just four, like I said, four areas in our life that betrayal completely wreaks havoc and disrupts and destroys. But as you've heard before, once something is destroyed, you have a decision to make. You can either walk away from that trash and rubble, or you can clean it up and rebuild. As you very well know, infidelity can be debilitating. The discovery of it is debilitating, and it consumes you. It consumes your focus in life. It consumes every area of your life. It is a long road to recover, whether you're reconciling, moving on, murder your spouse or significant other, whatever you do, the healing journey is going to be a long road. But with it is tremendous, profound happiness from your transformation. If you decide not to sit in that simmering area, a lot of people love to simmer. It's like, okay, I can't cool down and I can't boil, or I won't boil and I won't cool down. I'm just going to simmer. And that's fine, great, and dandy if that's what your choice is. But keep in mind, it's your choice. And that simmering is going to come out in other areas of your life, whether it's going to affect your physical health, your spiritual health, your emotional, your mental, whatever. That will have consequences. So if you're going to simmer, try not to simmer for so long. I just want to say the mere fact that you listen to this class tells me that you think you're worth to be healed. So, and I think you're worth it too.